Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the 2022 House elections and doing my first ever Battleground map. So, yeah, we're just going to hop right into it. If you don't, if you haven't been paying close attention to these Battleground or to these House races, because I know, this 435, it's a lot to follow. So I don't blame you really if you've been kind of tuned out to these individual districts. But if you have, that's totally fine. I got you covered. Just watch this video. I'll highlight a few districts for you that you should be watching, kind of put them in that mental space for politics, I guess, or ruminate over them, look at them however you want. But these are the races that will determine who wins the House in November, and these races will determine who, the landscape of politics the next 2 years. So I'm just going to fill out a map here of the races you should be watching, and we'll do this in geographical order. So we'll start in Maine, end up in Alaska, West Coast area, but yeah, so we're just going to start off. There is a seat in Maine that will be competitive, which is the 2nd district. So that's Jared Golden's seat. He's the incumbent Democrat. He's a good incumbent. He won by 4% in 2020 in a Trump plus 9 seat. So he did outrun Joe Biden by 13%. He's by all means someone who's very strong. And he's a Trump plus 7 seat. So functionally his seat did get bluer. But at the same time, it's Trump plus 7. It's a red wave. And maybe Golden's luck runs out this time because, you got to remember, there are a lot of good incumbents who were good incumbents until they kind of weren't. So, when you think about Colin Peterson, when you think about not Jennifer Wexton, Barbara Comstock, these incumbents in seats that voted the other way, and they were good incumbents till they kind of collapsed, and that could happen to Jared Golden this time. So, still a battleground, but I think the GOP should be optimistic about their chances here. Next up, we got New Hampshire. I think both races are competitive, which is interesting for New Hampshire because usually the GOP only really focus on one race. But yeah, both Chris Pappas and Ann Custer, I think, are going to be in trouble. Not in trouble, but I think they'll be in really tough races in November because New Hampshire is going to swing a lot, and the Republican Party of New Hampshire, especially Sununu on the ballot, could really put them in serious danger. And Custer, I think, is narrowly favored outright, but Pappas is in a really close battle. So for now, I think both these races are really pure battlegrounds, to be honest with you. Now, in New York, there are 5 seats to watch, and I'll highlight all of them but I don't really want to talk about all of them because there's a lot. But yeah, so it's kind of a string of districts, these 4, as well as Tom Swozey's district, which is the 3rd district right here. And so these are all kind of suburban or exurban or, kind of seats that are half urban, half rural. Seats that, some of them, I think, these are all Biden seats, and, you can make an argument for the Democrats winning all 5 of these seats. But at the same time, the GOP are going to be winning. When you look at it from the perspective of Biden won the national environment by 4.5% in 2020, the GOP will probably win it by something that mirrors that, 4 or 5%. That's you're looking at best for the Democrats a 6-point swing, not worse than a 10-point swing or 11-point swing. And that means that any seat that isn't Biden plus 10 isn't really that safe for them. And all these seats are all Biden plus 7, Biden plus 6, Biden plus 5 type seats. So the Democrats can hold on to them hypothetically. But at the same time, they're all if you applied a uniform swing, that all kind of flips sort of thing. So I think that the GOP are nearly favored in 3 out of these 5 seats. But again, it could be 5. It could also be, 0 or 1. Next up, we got Pennsylvania. There are 2 seats that, right here, the 7th district and the 8th district. So the 7th district has Susan Wild as the Democratic incumbent. She is in a Biden plus 2 seat. Although, again, in 2020, she only ran ahead of Biden by, I think, a half point or something. She ran essentially even with him. And this time, without Josh Shapiro will probably do well in Pennsylvania. He'll probably be the best performing Democrat. John Fetterman, I think, will do all right here. But at the end of the day, when you look at this district, it's only Biden plus 2 will probably trend red, and I think Wild loses. But again, it's still a battleground. In the 8th district, you've got Matt Cartwright, who'll be fighting a very tough race against whoever the Republicans pick. And again, when you look at this, it looks like a seat that would be pretty easily for the Republicans to flip because it's a Trump plus 3 district and it's in a pretty, right trending area. But Cartwright's a good incumbent. In 2020, he won in a Trump plus 4 district by a couple points, so he can certainly outrun the top of the ticket. And with Josh Shapiro on the ballot, Josh Shapiro did very well in this district too. So I think, at the end of the day, it's going to be very close with Cartwright. Although again, it's still an uphill battle. In next up, Pennsylvania, we actually have one more district, which is the 17th district, which is Connor Lamb's old district. Chris DeLuzio is I think DeLucio, I'll call him DeLucio, but Chris DeLucio is the Democratic candidate for this district, and he'll be trying to replace Connor Lamb. And He'll have to fight really hard to maintain the Pittsburgh suburbs because, like, this is a Biden +6 seat, so Biden did win the district by a decent amount, but at the same time, Biden did quite well in the Pittsburgh suburbs, and that isn't necessarily easy to replicate for the Democrats in the future. So I think for now, it'll be very tough. But again, if we see more signs of success for the Democrats, it might, fall a bit more into their favor. Um, in New Jersey, there's only one really competitive district, which is the 5th district. Josh Gottheimer, he's in a Biden district. I think he'll be okay. Like when you look at when you look at the races that the Republicans are focused on in New Jersey, you're probably more focused on unseating Tom Malinowski because they have a better candidate there in Tom Keene, and they have, really they have a better, I think, infrastructure there, and they have a better ability to sort of appeal to voters because Malinowski's not that good of an incumbent, whereas Gottheimer is also not perfect, but at the same time, he's in a much bluer district, and he's in a seat that is likely to be, I'd say at least bluer than the other districts in New Jersey. So Gottheimer narrowly favored for now, but again, it's still a battleground by all means. Next on the battleground list, we have the 6th District of Maryland, which is a Biden +10 seats. So again, very flippable for the GOP, although again, they'll have to climb sort of a bigger hill here than they will in other seats, which is why it might be a little less appealing. But yes, you've got, David Trone, the Democratic incumbent, facing off likely against Matt Foldy, who's the Republican challenger here. And at the end of the day, it will really come down to how good rural turnout is in the district because, the more Republican part of the seat is, kind of right out here. And so the rural parts of the district, if they turn out for Foldy, you have a good chance of beating David Trone in an environment like this. But at the same time, we don't really, we don't fully know how, we don't fully know how big that wave will be, and we don't fully know how good GOP turnout will be because there's a chance it kind of falls off a bit in a midterm as it did in the past. So Virginia, we got another 2 seats here, which are Spanberger's seat and Luria's seat. These are 2 Democratic incumbents that are going to be facing really tough battles for re-election, especially Luria, who had a scandal a few days ago where I think she violated the ethics. I think she violated some rule of House ethics. I don't fully know, but I think she used donations or something. But she abused her role on a committee and funneled money, which is a bad look for her, especially if the GOP makes it an issue in this campaign. So she's already in a tough seat. It's only Biden +2. It's a seat that will be very susceptible to a red shift in 2022. But at the same time, the GOP might just focus on other races because they might think they have this one in the bag, and it's possible that Luria has an upset victory here. But yeah, Jen Kagans is a good opponent. I think when you look at this race, it's one of the first seats off the board for the Republicans. So it's a battleground, but again, they shouldn't get too cocky here. The 7th district, though, I think that one's a pure toss-up, to be honest. Abigail Spanberger, she's a good incumbent. She outran Biden. She's in a seat that is pretty blue, aside from 2021, where Glenn Youngkin did win it by 5%. But, Hillary Clinton won it. Tim Kaine won it. Ralph Northam won it. Joe Biden won it. Mark Warner won it. So aside from that, 2021 local election where the Democrats did very poorly in Virginia, it's a pretty blue seat. But at the same time, 2021 was a red wave to say what 2022 will likely be. So the GOP do have very good chances of, doing well here. And Yesli Vega did, she's the GOP's candidate here. So she's kind of a mixed bag. On one hand, she did work for Youngkin. She has kind of like that winning, I guess, energy in her. But, at the same time, she made some controversial statements about abortion. And I see her as someone who's a bit overrated for the seat. So it will be by all means a battleground. But I think Spanberger being the incumbent gives her a narrow edge for now. North Carolina, the 13th district is a battleground, but I think the GOP are favored there because, again, it's sort of a seat where the Democrats aren't likely going to do super well. North Carolina as a whole, which is why the seat's more because it's a Biden seat again, as most of these battlegrounds are, they're narrow Biden seats. So this is a seat where the Democrats, I think, are going to fall a fair bit, and I could be wrong, which is why it could stay in Democratic hands, but for now, it's a battleground that I think the Republicans have a good chance of flipping. Georgia, nothing there. Florida, actually, no battlegrounds for the first time in a while. I mean, you could make an argument for Maria Elvira Salazar's seat. She's being challenged by Annette Taddeo, who's a good challenger, I think. But it's still a seat where the Republicans did well in 2020, and Maria Elvira Salazar is a very good incumbent too. I think Ohio, you could make an argument for a few seats. You could put Copter in the battleground section. I won't do that because I think she's getting kind of a little overhyped because look, she's in a Trump +3 seat. she's a good incumbent, but at the same time, the seat actually did trend red from 2016 2020, so I won't put it there. But I will put two other seats, which are the first district and the 13th district. In the first district, you have Steve Caput, the GOP incumbent, who I think is, I'd say he's a pretty strong incumbent. He's, again, someone who does have scandals, but for whatever reason, it doesn't really seem to affect him. The Democrats don't have a great challenger here, so I think for now it's a seat that narrowly favors the Republicans, but it's a Biden plus 8 seat. It's left trending, and like when you look at it, it could absolutely flip, which is why it's on the radar for the Democrats. 13th district is a Biden plus 5 seat. It's, again, Republican incumbent Anthony Gonzalez. He'll be in for a tough race too, but it's by all means a battleground. Now, in Michigan, we have three, arguably four competitive races here, and maybe five by the end of the decade. But yeah, we've got the 7th district, the 8th district, and the 3rd district, and I think you can make an argument for all these districts being toss-ups, and I think two of these three districts are toss-ups in my eyes. One is leading Republican, but yeah. So first of all, the 3rd district, which is held by Republican Peter Meijer, is a seat where the Democrats been doing really well as of late. Joe Biden, despite doing 8% worse statewide, did a couple points better than Gretchen Whitmer here. And that just, to me, really shows the leftward trend in this district. And so Peter Meijer is a good candidate by all means, but the Democrats have a good opponent in Hillary Schulten. And, the leftward trends here could really carry the Democrats to a victory. The question is how fast. In the 7th district, which is this kind of box-shaped district right here, that's Celeste Slotkin's district. Slotkin's a good incumbent, but she's only in a Biden plus 3 seat. And I think that, the Democrats might have a turnout problem here because the only really Democratic area of the seat is Lansing. And Lansing, as we know, has had turnout problems in past midterms like 2014 and 2010. And so the GOP have a lot of reasons to be optimistic about this. But again, it's still a very good Democratic incumbent in a Biden seat. Then the 8th district, Dan Kildee, who is arguably one of the strongest incumbents in the country. Kildee is someone who, ran 25 points ahead of Hillary Clinton, and I think ran 7 or 10 points ahead of Joe Biden. And he's someone who I really do expect to do better than, other Democrats in his same position would be doing, because, he's running against a bad Republican opponent, Paul Jungay, who lost a Trump seat last in 2020. And Kildee is someone who I think has a lot of appeal, because the district is much bluer down ballot than it is at the federal level. And so I think Kildee has a lot of appeal to Trump voters, and that could save him. So yeah. Next up in Illinois, there's only one seat here that I think is going to be super competitive, which is the 17th district, which is Sherry Bustos' seat. But the Democrats and Republicans here have been duking it out. It's a Biden plus 8 seat, but it's trending to the right. It's a working class, very white, and the Democratic areas like Rockford might see a drop in turnout. So despite the fact that it's Biden plus 8, I still think that when you look at it, the GOP have a lot of reasons to be optimistic here. Indiana, there's actually a competitive seat there, and it's not too competitive. I think this is one of our less competitive battlegrounds, but it's still worth talking about because it's a seat that I think will has potential to be a battleground. I'm very close to moving out of the battleground kind of territory range-ish, but it's currently held by the Democrats. Frank Mervyn is the incumbent here. He's a good incumbent, but it's a seat that's been trending to the right in recent years. It's it was a seat that was actually better for Hillary Clinton than Joe Biden, despite the fact that Biden did better statewide than Clinton did. So certainly there are GOP trends, and the seat will almost certainly get redder in 2022, especially with that red wave we're seeing. But again, good incumbent. The shift, I don't think, will be too drastic, and at the end of the day, I think the Democrats will hold on to it. But again, still a battleground, still worth watching. Minnesota, we got one, which is the 2nd district here. Angie Craig is the Democratic incumbent. It's kind of your classic can the Democrats hold on to their suburban seats example. It's just Minneapolis suburbs, really. Light blue plus light red suburbs makes a competitive district. Biden did quite well here. Clinton narrowly won it, but in stronger GOP performances, they could absolutely flip it. So very much a battleground, classic example of a competitive seat this year. This would be one of our rare Trump seats on the list. In Iowa's 2nd district, this is a seat that Trump carried by just a couple thousand votes in 2020, but it has a Democratic incumbent. Yeah, Cindy Axne is someone who will be fighting very hard to retain her seat, but in a red wave environment in a year with the Democratic Party is likely to be falling in Iowa and nationwide, I think she'll have to fight a very difficult battle. Louisiana hasn't drawn their map yet. This is the old map, but there's a chance the Democrats get a 2nd seat in Louisiana, although it's not super likely. But anyways, I don't really think it matters too much because it would probably be a likely Democratic seat. It wouldn't really be a battleground. But yeah, there are a few battlegrounds in Texas, so I think it's generous to the Republicans, but I think we're going to put the 34th district as a battleground because it will have a Republican incumbent, and Mayra Flores. We don't really have any evidence that she's this great incumbent because, again, she won a Biden seat in a June special election, so impressive on her part. But at the same time, she outspent the Democrats 34-1. The Democrats did not try here, and turnout was just abysmal. I don't really think it means that much to win a low turnout special election where you have all the money. So Flores, she could be a good incumbent, and I think I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. But for now, I do think she'll lose. But again, keep your eyes on that race. But I think the real toss-up for here is the 28th district with Henry Cuellar. Cuellar is someone who I think really will have a tough time holding on, despite the fact most people think he's going to win. He's running against Cassie Garcia, who has experience in politics. She worked for Ted Cruz in 2016. She's, I think, one of the better fits for the district because she is a conservative Hispanic who will, I think, do well with Hispanics, which is a group of the Republicans have been gaining with, obviously, as of late, but still have a long ways to go. And Cuellar is an incumbent. He's, I think, a pretty good incumbent for the district in all fairness, but at the same time, he only won his primary by like 150 votes. It was very close, very divided area where the southern parts of the district are very favorable to Cuellar, but the northern parts, like the San Antonio suburbs, are not. So, I think it'll be a very close race here for Cuellar's seat. Next, you got Kansas Reese David. She's in a Biden +4 seat, which is going to be very tough for her because, again, we're expecting at best for the Democrats to only have 5 or 6 points, which would already cancel out the Biden +4 nature of her district. So I think that makes it hard for Davids, but at the same time, it's very left-running. She's a very good incumbent, and the Kansas GOP is going to be dragged down because Laura Kelly's likely to out. Like, Laura Kelly will lose this election, don't get me wrong, but statewide she'll run ahead of Biden, which will drag some Republicans down. So I think that it's a very competitive race by all means. Nebraska second, not really, kind of like Indiana first, not really too true of a battleground, but I still think it's worth talking about briefly because when you look at it, it's a Biden Biden +6 or 7 seat. It's a seat where the Republican Party holds on to it, but like at the end of the day, the Democrats, I think, in 2022 won't spend too much time here. In all honesty, the same way the Republicans might not spend too much time in Indiana. Or like the Democrats might kind of just give up on like Ohio 13, or the Republicans, might give up on Indiana 1 or flipping New York 3 or whatever. But point being, Nebraska 1 is a seat that I think is very interesting long term because the left trends in the Omaha metro area make things more hard for the Republicans, by the end of the decade. But I think for now it might not be contested, but it's still a seat to watch, still a seat to see how close it gets. Colorado, we got another really competitive seat there. It's the 8th district, which, Obama won by 8%, Biden won by 5%, although it did flip to Trump in 2016. So it's a classic, usually Democratic seat, flipped in 2016 because Trump did well, but flipped back to the Democrats. And so, that it's kind of a stagnant trending seat. It's trending a little left if you look at recent partisanships, but like long term, it's not really moving anywhere. So I think that Colorado 8 will be very tough, considering that it's tough to predict, tough for both parties, really, because the GOP aren't going to be running someone great here, but at the same time, the Democratic Party is at a disadvantage here because it's only a Biden +4.5 seat, and fundamentally the country will shift at least 5 or 6% to the right, unless my predictions are very wrong. In which case, this map is useless because, like if the Democrats somehow only manage to lose 3% nationwide, or lose 3%, not lose by 3%, but lose 3% in terms of the shift, it would be a very good night for them. But I'm not expecting that. New Mexico, I think you could make a case for 2. I'll only put 1 though because I kind of want to just because the thing is, once you put too many battlegrounds, it becomes hard to focus, and I want to make this list as kind of selective as possible, which is why I didn't put Illinois 11 or Texas 15 or Michigan 10 or whatever. And I think that for this, you can make an argument for New Mexico. I think this is the first district, or it's the first or third. But you can make an argument for this district. I'm not going to though, because I think I'd just rather spend time on this district, which is the second district, which is the true toss of New Mexico, because it's a Biden +6. It's unlike most majority or plurality Hispanic seats. It did not swing against Biden that much because when you look at most Hispanic seats, they went from Clinton +15 to Biden +5. Right? They trended towards Trump. This seat went from Clinton +6 to Biden +6. It's a seat where the Democrats did well in 2020. Even Ben Ray Lujan, who only beat Mark Ronchetti statewide by 6% or whatever, he won the seat by 3%. It's still a seat that the Democrats have did well in 2020. They did very well in 2018. And, they did well in 2016. So that on the surface looks good for them. But when you factor in there's a Republican incumbent, albeit not a very good one, but there is a Republican incumbent, 2022 will be redder than 2016, 2018, and 2020. I think this seat's kind of in pure toss-up territory. Key battleground. I don't think like Arizona. Arizona, you could really put five. Like you could easily, very easily, I could make an argument for the first district, the sixth district, the fifth district, and the fourth district. Which I think this is the fourth district. I believe so. Let me check here. Let's see Arizona, because I want to make sure I get this right, because it's easy to mix the district. But the fourth district, yeah, this is the fourth district. I was right. But yeah, so I think you could make an argument for there to be even 4 districts on this map, and I'm not going to do that. I'll make it as selective as possible and only put the Stanton district. So Stanton is a Democratic incumbent. It's a Biden plus 10 seat, but it's an area that really moved to the left in recent years. It's very reliant on urban and Hispanic turnout, and that is good for Democrats in presidential years, and it probably will, if it doesn't flip in 2022, it probably won't flip for a while. But at the same time, if turnout really, really, really just collapses for Democrats in Arizona, it could flip. But yeah, I think for now I'll put it in the battleground category. Now Nevada, I think is the only state that has the majority of their seats being battlegrounds, because we've got 3 battlegrounds here, which are this is the first district, we've got the third district, and the second district. So yeah, I think that these, the 2 smaller districts, which are the second district, or I think this is the third district and the second district, yeah. These the true battlegrounds. The first district's a little bluer. It's probably leaning towards the Democrats, whereas these 2 are pure toss-ups. But yeah, these are all, narrow Biden seats. They're all seats where the Republicans have a chance of flipping, but they're kind of knocking on the door. They're kind of, I think this seat the Republicans might be favored in, but in the third and first district. No, this is the second district. I always get these 2 mixed up. But these 2 seats, I think the Republicans are narrowly underdogs. This one, I think they're narrowly favored in, if that makes sense. But again, you can kind of trade them all around, because they're all very similar partisanships at the same time. So I think the Democrats have a chance of winning all 3, they have a chance of losing all 3, but they're all very competitive. Now, kind of to round out this list, we've got the West Coast. So there's one in Washington, which is the 8th district, which is Kim Schreier. She is the Democratic incumbent, and it's kind of the reverse New Mexico too, because on the surface it looks very good for the Republicans. Not that great of a Democratic incumbent, and it's redder down ballot because Clinton and Biden both won it, but the Republicans won the treasurer race, the secretary of state race, the governor race, the lieutenant, every single statewide office other than president, which isn't even statewide office, but every local or non-federal office in Washington, it usually goes red, which is why I think there's reason for Republicans to be optimistic here. And the fact that it's not a good Democratic incumbent, Kim Schreier is not that good of an incumbent here, the Democrats, and I think that makes the Republicans optimistic about this. But at the same time, it's very left trending. It's a seat that will likely not see this seat is one of the seats least susceptible to a red shift in 2022 because it's so college educated and so suburban, and that helps the Democrats here greatly. So very, very tough race for both parties here. Oregon flag Jamie McLeod Skinner, who unseated Democratic incumbent Kurt Schrader. Schrader, again, was a conservative Democrat who won the seat off of bipartisan support from Democrats and Republicans. He's now gone. And Jamie McLeod Skinner is more of a progressive, and she'll have to fight really hard to win the seat because it's it's Biden plus 8-ish, so it's blue leaning, and it will probably flip in 2024 if it flips red in 2022. But at the same time, the Democrats in Oregon are not doing very well at the statewide level. Drazen versus Kotek will be a competitive governor race, and the state of Oregon is a state that I really think will trend right in 2022. And I think when you look at the nature of this district, the Democrats have to get good turnout from both the Portland suburbs and the Bend area, and that's tough to do. So it's absolutely a battleground, even though it's a Biden plus 8 seat. California, you have a lot of potentially battleground seats, but I'm only going to put 3 here, which is the 22nd district and then the 2 OC districts, which are the 47th and 49th districts with Porter and Levin. I think that. And also Garcia, obviously. But Porter and Levin, I think, are both narrowly favored. They both saw good turnout in the primary. They both are polling quite well. And I think Porter especially is a good fundraiser who has the ability to do very well. So I think when you look at that, it makes it good for the Democrats here. Although, again, it's Orange County. It does swing a lot. It's still, an area that I think is very, very susceptible to a red shift if things go well for the Republicans nationwide. So battlegrounds. Then you got the 27th district, which is Mike Garcia. He's in a Biden plus 11 seat, and he didn't really get that great of a primary turnout. So, there's always a chance he's not doing too hot right now. But again, Christy Smith has lost to Garcia twice. Garcia is a very good incumbent. Hispanic turnout might be bad for Democrats. So I think it'll be very, very close. But at the end of the day, I don't really know. I could see both Garcia or Christy Smith winning. Then the 22nd with Valadeo, I was really pretty bullish on Valadeo. He's the Republican incumbent. I said it's a Biden plus 13 seat, so it's the bluest seat that is on this list for the Republicans, I believe. But at the end of the day, Valadeo is a good incumbent, so I thought, he'll probably win re-election, right? However, Rudy Salas is a Democratic challenger, and he's been stronger than I've expected. Salas is a state assemblyman. He ran 8% ahead of Biden in a very Hispanic area. So even though Democrats are falling with Hispanics, really everywhere, Salas might be able to combat that. And I think, when you look at the primary turnout, Salas got almost 46% of the vote in that primary, despite the fact that even 2018, where Valadeo lost to TJ Cox, the Republicans got 61% of the vote in that primary. This year, they only got, 55%. So it was quite the year for Democrats quite the primary for Democrats in the Central Valley. And Rudy Salas, I think, is looking very good right now. So very competitive race that I originally thought would be leaning Republican, but now I think pure toss between Salas and Valadeo. So that is it for the Battleground map. It's this is about half an hour long, so took a while to make. Like you can notice, I think, like if you look at this map, you see a lot in the West. A few in there are a lot of Hispanic seats too, like in Nevada and New Mexico and Texas and Florida potentially. If I add the Maria Elvira Salazar. East, you had a lot in New York, a lot in Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, Maine, Virginia, a couple in Maryland, or one in Maryland, a couple in Ohio, a lot in Michigan too. And then you have singles in Nebraska, Kansas, Colorado, Iowa, Minnesota, Illinois, Maryland, North Carolina. And I think when you look at this map, you can notice the South is the only area really devoid of battleground, aside from the Mountain West. But again, that's it's always deep red there. Montana 1 might be competitive in a few years, but yeah, aside from that, I don't really think it'll be anything here for a while. But yeah, so these are the 41 key seats you have to watch in November. I'll update this list every month. We might see some seats retract, we might see some seats added, but yeah, thanks for watching this video. If you find it informative, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye, guys.